Alright, so yes, I know my nose is really red. People love pointing that out for some reason. I wasn't sure whether to post this video on my horror channel and have it be a topic we discuss there, or post it as a No Makeup Monday. Clearly I chose a No Makeup Monday, and that is mental illness being portrayed in the horror genre. I have a specific example I'm going to be talking about today, and basically this is just going to be a conversation with you. I don't have an outline. I have no thought process really planned for this video. I just thought I'd sit and ramble with you guys a bit talking about mental illness being portrayed in a horror manner. Basically this video is going to be formed as kind of a question, and I'd love for you to leave your thoughts down below. I just ask that you please be respectful. If you do disagree with either me or someone else in the comments, just don't be aggressive about it, you know, don't be rude to other people. Sometimes I see that when I talk about controversial things and I'm just like, we don't have time for this. I'm actually really surprised that I have not talked about this earlier because it's something I'm very passionate about. As you guys know, I'm a psych student. I'm actually graduating this semester with my psych degree. And so I'm very sensitive to things regarding mental illness. And you'll know that if you watch my review of The Visit, which is a great example. I'll probably bring it up again in this video later, but I did a review over my horror channel. I know I keep referencing my horror channel. I'm just assuming you guys know about it, but if you don't, I review horror movies and talk about horror things over there, so if you're into that, go look. So clearly I'm into psychology and I'm into horror, and now they cross paths sometimes, and is it appropriate? That's kind of what I'm asking, and not always, in my opinion, is it appropriate. So this thought process started when I saw an article written by HorrorBuzz, which I followed them. They initially followed me, and I was like, okay, I'll follow them back, right? No hate towards them, I just disagree with this article, so I unfollowed them. They still follow me. I don't think they even saw my tweets about it, or they did and just decided not to acknowledge it, which is fine. They can have no comment on it. It's whatever. But I thought we'd address it in today's video. Not calling them out or anything. I don't want this to be like a hate spree or anything for HorrorBuzz, because it's just not like that. I just thought it should open a conversation and be, you know, a respectful conversation regarding the way that mental illness is not taken seriously in these aspects. So they wrote an article called Fear Virtual Reality 5150 Shuddered at Knott's Scary Farm. It's like a farm where there's different haunted attractions that you can go to. Well, they had one called Fear VR 5150, which right off the bat, the name is not appropriate. 5150 is a police call that you would make if someone is mentally ill and they are unstable and they are either causing a harm to someone else or themselves, and you basically take them without their consent. So that's kind of what happens in this virtual reality attraction. You're taken, you're strapped to a wheelchair, and you're watching as this girl, it seems, is a demonically possessed patient. So here's what happened. Mental health advocates nationwide emailed Knott's and Cedar Fair administrators expressing their concern over the last week that the portrayal of a possessed girl in a hospital as part of a virtual reality horror show stigmatizes and denigrates individuals with mental illnesses. The issue I have with this article is the way it was written. They did not write it in a non-biased way. Clearly they were against the fact that this ride was shut down because of mental health advocates, because they go on to say the Orange County chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, I follow them on Twitter, I love them, complained to Knott's about the attraction. So the language that they're using right there is saying they're complaining about something like this, when it should be taken seriously, especially when a huge group like that see something wrong with a certain attraction, then there's probably something wrong with it. And this is where it gets worse in this article. We at HorrorBuzz feel that the real victims have not been heard. How do the demonically possessed and those with telekinetic powers feel in being used as a device for horror? They're making light of the fact that mental illness is portrayed in horror and saying, well, what about people who are possessed by demons or have telekinetic powers? What about them? Shouldn't they get offended because they're used for horror purposes? Which if that group is offended by it, then it also should change. But what is more likely? Almost everyone in their life will suffer from a mental illness. It's just a given. Either they will, or they will definitely know someone who will. So they decided to reach out to the Church of Satan, who gave a quote, and what bothered me is that most of the quotes used in this article were from him and not from the NAMI representative. So they only gave the NAMI representative one quote in the article to explain their side of it, and then quoted the high priest in the Church of Satan multiple times, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it was the fact that he said things that supported their angle, that's why they used his quotes more. And the quote that pissed me off the most in this was, "We can only assume," this is Horror Buzz, not the Church of Satan, okay? "We can only assume that along with the Telekinetic Association of America, the National Association of Social Workers, the Wheelchair Foundation, the National Black Hair Association, the Skinny Girl Foundation would be pleased of this closure." So they're saying that everyone who's offended by everything would also be happy with the closure of this ride. So the quote that they included from the chapter president from NAMI says, "By closing this ride down, they've moved things away from a negative place. We see this as an opportunity to talk about this if they are open to that." So it closes with the statement of, "Regardless of your thoughts on the matter, you are already wrong, as you will invariably offend someone intentionally or unintentionally. Best to stop creating and stop trying to entertain." I will link the whole article down below, by the way. I don't know if you guys will be able to see my issues that I have with this article and the way it was written. I have no problem with them disagreeing with the fact that the ride was shut down, but I do think it starts a conversation of how far is too far in exploiting something as serious as mental illnesses and mental health, in the sense of using it as something horrifying. The fact that people are making light of this situation when all they wanted to do was shut the ride down in an attempt to reduce the stigma of mental illness, because it paints it in a completely different light than what it actually is. Schizophrenia does not look like murdering people and hearing voices and seeing things all the time. In order to make something like a mental illness horrific, they have to go to the extreme. They have to show all the negative sides of what could happen maybe to 1% of people who have that mental illness. But if you actually portrayed someone in movies with mental illnesses, they would look like normal people. There's nothing that scary about them in the sense of what you see in horror movies. Are mental illnesses horrifying and scary? Absolutely, especially for the person who's suffering with them. And that is why they need to be taken seriously and not be stigmatized, and with the horror community constantly showing the negative aspects of mental illness or even exploiting it, it doesn't reduce the stigma. If anything, it makes it bigger, because people are more likely to use the words crazy, insane. Of course, I have to address real quick before we go, American Horror Story Asylum. Now, as you guys know, this is my favorite season of American Horror Story, and you might think that's a little hypocritical. But I was thinking about it the other day, and what I think that show portrays more is the unethical treatment that happened in those institutions at that time. Yes, I think some of the portrayal of the people in the institution might have been a little too far, because not everybody was like that, but they also would be like that based on how they were treated in the past, because at the time they did not have proper medications, they didn't even have proper beds, so of course they would probably be a little bit, their mental illness wouldn't be as controlled as it would be in today's society. So I think that show, although probably pushed it a little bit to the extreme, actually showed a different side of what is actually scary about mental illness, and that is the past and the history of mental illness and how it was treated before. Let me know if you want a whole video on the controversial subject of past institutions, asylums. They fascinate me, and the fact and how far we've come with treating mental illness and dealing with it is amazing. We have a lot more education about mental illness now, and I think there's no point in really exploiting it for horror purposes anymore. That's just my thoughts. That's my opinion. It's what I'm passionate about, is mental illness and reducing the stigma. It's my ultimate goal in life, to see it completely reduced and people be able to openly talk about it. But because there's these horror images, if someone says, "Oh, I have schizophrenia," we have a picture in our mind of what that looks like, when really it's not accurate. This should be an ongoing conversation on my channel, so if you want, we can talk about it more in future No Makeup Mondays. It's a topic I love talking about, so let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear. That is it for today's No Makeup Monday. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon.